They say you can tell everything about a kitchen by what it smells like at night. Not during service, not when the burners are screaming and tickets are flying, but late at night when it's quiet and the truth has nowhere to hide. The night this story really began, the kitchen smelled like burnt butter and humiliation, and I was standing there watching a plate I'd worked on for 4 hours get scraped straight into the trash. My boss looked at me, shook his head, and said, "You call this fine dining? I wouldn't serve this to my dog." 40 people in the dining room went silent forks mid-air. Yeah, that's where it started. My name is Caleb Moore. I was 41 years old then, and I'd spent nearly 2 decades inside the walls of a restaurant called Alder & Stone. It used to be one of those places people talked about with respect, the kind of kitchen where you learned discipline, pride, and patience. But that night, standing under those lights while my boss, Ethan Cross, made sure everyone knew exactly how little he thought of me, it felt like none of that mattered anymore. Ethan had taken over the restaurant 6 months earlier. Fresh MBA designer shoes, never burned his fingers on a pan in his life. The first thing he told us was that emotions didn't belong in business. "We're here to maximize value," he said, tapping his phone like it was a holy book. And every week after that, he reminded me I was replaceable. He joked about my background, about the way I cooked, about how my flavors were a little too much, like culture itself was a problem that needed trimming. When I tried to explain why a dish mattered, he'd wave me off and say, "This isn't a neighborhood spot, Caleb. Act like you belong here." I nodded. I always nodded, because that kitchen used to be home. Before, Ethan Alder & Stone was run by Harold Bennett. Old-school chef, rough voice, soft heart. He taught me how to taste with intention, how to respect ingredients, how to lead without crushing people. The night before he retired, he handed me a worn notebook and said, "If anyone ever tries to tell you who you are in this kitchen, open this." Then he smiled and walked away. A week later, he was gone. Ethan arrived the following Monday. The changes were fast. Too fast. Suppliers replaced with cheaper ones, longtime staff quietly let go, family meals canceled. "We're not running a charity," Ethan liked to say. Every decision was about numbers, never about people. And somehow, every criticism landed on me. My sauces were confusing. My plating was too expressive. Once, after I added a hint of spice to a classic dish, he leaned in and said, "Save that stuff for places that serve comfort food. You know what that does to someone who's poured their life into a craft. It shrinks you, slowly, quietly, until you start questioning things you never doubted before." Then came the severance envelope. White, clean, sitting on my kitchen table like it had every right to be there. 3 months' pay, a polite exit. The cost of my silence. My daughter Lily found me staring at it and asked what was wrong. I told her everything. The trash can, the insults, the way the restaurant felt like it was rotting from the inside out. She looked at me and said, "So you're just going to let him decide who you are?" I didn't have an answer. That night I opened Harold's notebook. Inside were recipes I'd never seen before. Not menu items, not crowd pleasers, but stories. Dishes built from overlooked ingredients, from traditions passed down quietly. And tucked in the back was a letter. "If you're reading this," Harold wrote, "it means someone forgot what this kitchen is supposed to be. There's a lockbox in the storage room. Codes the date you first burned risotto. Inside is everything I never got to serve. Cook it when you're ready. Not for approval, for truth." I didn't sleep. At 2:30 a.m., I drove back to the restaurant, heart pounding like I was committing a crime. The back door opened like it remembered me. The kitchen was dark except for the exit signs glowing red. I found the box. The code worked. Inside were handwritten recipes and a spare key. I laughed, quiet and shaky. Of course, Harold planned for this. For 3 nights I cooked in secret. Late. Alone. Using the ingredients Ethan called worthless. Bruised produce, trim cuts, frozen seafood shoved to the back of the freezer, and every plate that came together felt like breathing again. I filmed it, photographed it. Proof just in case I needed to remind myself I wasn't crazy. On the 4th night, everything collided. I walked in early, ready to cook one last time. The lights were already on. Bright, harsh. Ethan was there scrolling through inventory on his phone like the place owed him something. He looked up, saw me, and smiled without humor. "You breaking in now?" he asked. Said he'd call the police. Said I was done. Something in me snapped, but not the loud kind. The quiet kind that finally stops begging. I told him the truth. The restaurant was failing. Reviews were down. Regulars had disappeared. He didn't know how to fix it because spreadsheets don't taste food. He laughed. Then I made him an offer. 1 dish, 30 minutes. If it wasn't worth it, I'd leave forever. He agreed, arms crossed, watching like he expected me to fail. I cooked with focus I hadn't felt in years. Every movement intentional, every decision honest. When I slid the plate toward him, he hesitated, took a bite, froze, took another. His face changed slow and undeniable. "This is—" He stopped, swallowed. "Where did this come from?" "From everything you threw away," I said. Before he could respond, the back door opened. A woman stepped in gray hair, sharp eyes, calm presence. Food critic, renowned, invited anonymously. She took in the scene, the plates, the silence, and smiled slightly. "Interesting," she said. She tasted everything, asked questions, took notes. When she asked how long I'd been cooking like this, I said, "Only when no one's watching." That landed harder than anything else that night. Ethan fired me on the spot. I folded my jacket, picked up Harold's notebook, and walked out into the early morning light. My phone buzzed before I hit the street. Then it buzzed again, and again. 2 days later, an article dropped. The story of a chef cooking in secret at 3 a.m., creating extraordinary food from what others dismissed. It spread fast, too fast. Ethan called angry, then desperate. Investors pulled out. Lawyers got involved. Turns out Harold left a clause in his will. If the restaurant declined under new ownership, I had the right to buy it at the old value, with help. A month later, I signed the papers. Alder and Stone reopened under new leadership. Same walls, new soul. The people who'd been pushed out came back. The kitchen breathed again. Every night now, I leave one light on after closing. Not for secrecy, as a reminder. That talent doesn't need permission. That being underestimated doesn't mean being wrong. So here's my question for you. If you were in that kitchen, would you have stayed quiet, or would you have cooked anyway? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear where you stand.